The Lost Language of Trees. It was just a little after daybreak on the idyllic shores of Loch Ness in Scotland. Winds from the mountains to the south were skimming the craggy slopes on the opposite bank before twisting onto the loch. As the fingers of this playful zephyr rippled the surface of the water, dark and mysterious shapes seemed to congregate below, reaching up to touch the air for a single transitory moment. As the shadowy figures spread further across the loch, they seemed to reflect the ominous rain clouds that cascaded over the crest of the mountains. I was sitting on a rocky peninsula, listening to the low rhythmic thud of the water as its foamy periphery clambered onto the rocks for an instant before ebbing backwards into the darkness. Warming sunlight on my face eased the morning chill in the damp air. The joyous chorus of songbirds saturated the air, and gradually I became completely enveloped by the power of this dynamic landscape. With each passing moment I lost myself in this elaborate dance of life that existed all around me. This moment was all-encompassing, like the first bite of a sweet and juicy strawberry, or the rapture of a favourite piece of music that elevates your soul to soaring new heights of pleasure. I was brought back from my introspection by the invigorating breath of the wind that whispered portents of the approaching rain. The first few icy droplets on my cheek were in stark contrast to the vibrant heat of the sun, and I felt as if I were sitting between worlds, the bright, sunlit, song-filled realm of the eastern forest and the dark, brooding mountains to the south. For a while I contemplated the thought of returning to the retreat house where I was facilitating an event that day, yet in awe of this beautiful place I stayed, knowing that this moment, right now, was precious. I decided that it was time to step outside of myself, to disconnect from the definitions of the physical body, and to connect to the observer, the I am. I realized by my sitting at a point where the sun and the rain met that I was in a very special place. So I took my awareness to the mountainous slopes towering above the loch, and I gazed at the person perched on the rocks below. I watched from afar the man sitting at the end of the rainbow, and I felt blissful in the knowledge that in everyday circumstances magic is everywhere, if only you look for it. As I roused from my joyous state, I was aware of another presence. My happiness had caught the attention of a tiny oak sapling that was growing from a space between two boulders. This beautiful little being was only an arm's length from where I had been sitting, but he was so intent on remaining unnoticed that I had been unaware of his presence until then. I reached out and held his delicate trunk in between my thumb and forefinger. He was thinner than a pencil, with his first leaves of spring just breaking from their buds. So young and frightened, this child, this living creature, knew so much of fear that I was saddened by the way he recoiled from my touch in terror. "It's okay," I explained in the Dwch language of the oak tree. "I am here to listen, and I want to help you." The tree regarded me with bewilderment for a short while. A human who could speak the lost language of trees was indeed a curiosity. I just smiled and waited for him to gain enough confidence to reconnect with me, and then I asked him of his plans, his future, his wishes and his dreams. "Tell me," I inquired, "what are your plans for this coming year? What do you want to achieve?" "To stay as small as I can," he replied timidly. I was puzzled by his response, and wanted to discover the reasons for his apathy. "You do not want to grow, to become tall and strong?" He pondered this for a moment before directing my attention to a place further along the shoreline, to where 3 stumps of what were once the trunks of huge pine trees jutted from the rocks. This stark, cruel image, and the pain of the little oak associated with it, were haunting. I glanced from this trio of fallen trees to the house where I was staying. I stared at the bay windows that offered such a beautiful view of the loch, and I realized why these lives had been snuffed out. "If I grow," said the oak, "they will cut me down." It is not fitting for an oak tree to be afraid. I have only ever known them as noble, heroic, fearless, and even though I have met individuals that could be deemed austere, they never display the slightest hint of trepidation. I held back the grief that erupted within me at the misguided logic of my species, as the oak said in a whisper, "I don't want to die." "I will tell you what to do," I explained with resolve. "You must strive every single moment of every day to be the best that you can be. Drink voraciously from the water of the loch. Send your roots deeply into the ground, be flexible and bend with the wind, so that you grow up stronger and more beautiful than any other creature that lives in this place." The oak remained silent for a while. This human was indeed peculiar. "When you are the most wondrous sight on the shore of this place," I continued, "when you stand resilient and confident and powerful, when you fear nothing, you will not spoil their view of the loch. You will become their view of the loch. If you do this, they will never cut you down, because to do so would ruin what they treasure most." The oak took a while to reflect upon the notions of this unusual human, who not only spoke his language, but seemed to care deeply for his kind. As is the way with most trees, they do not rush or act quickly. Trees have more time than we can comprehend, so why miss the joy of a single moment by rushing to get there without enjoying the journey? Even baby trees take their time to contemplate every challenge in relation to their perspective of the world. If they did not, they may miss out on the ecstasy each challenge brings. Then I felt a rush of renewed courage burst from the tree as it made the decision to take my advice, and with that overwhelming explosion came images of a long and glorious life filled with happiness. As the sapling took his first step to being all that he could be, he chose a future where each and every second is relished, all seasons are experienced to the absolute full, and a lifetime is lived with nobility and serenity. This little oak tree had determined with a single thought to squeeze every last drop of joy from a life that would span centuries, and I understood in a brief solitary flash of time I had guided this tree to a place where, no matter what happened in the future, he would achieve his dreams every single day. It is the nature of our tree friends that when we offer them a gift, whether it be a drink of water on a hot day, a nourishing sprinkle of fertilizer when the ground is lacking, the planting of their seed, words of love, or actions that defend them when they cannot look after themselves, they offer a kindness in return. This tiny oak was no exception. He asked what he could do for me in return for taking the time to help him. My answer was simple. I wanted him to remember the bright spring morning when a man came and sat at the end of the rainbow. Remember this man who told him to be the best that he could be, to take a moment each day and remember. That way I could live in this magnificent place for many, many years to come, and I would always be thought of with kindness and love. As I said farewell to this most insignificant and profound of beings, I thought to myself how beautiful and perfect this morning had been. I reflected on how the choice to get every last drop of joy from my own life meant instilling this ideal in others. To know only love, bliss, and wonder, one must be love, bliss, and wonder. It was at that moment that I made the decision to write this book, as a way of sharing with you the discovery of how you too can be the best that you can be. I wanted to share the moments I have experienced in the hope that you may be inspired to find your bliss, your perfection. I offer you the insights that I discovered along the way. So when you are ready, pull up a rock, sit yourself down and know that you are at the end of a rainbow with somebody who has secrets to tell you. These secrets will lead you to places, sensations, emotions, and knowledge that are beyond your wildest imaginings. You will explore realms of infinite possibilities, learn to perceive the world in a very different way, and meet beings that love you with such an intense compassion that you never believed it was possible to be that adored. On our journey together, We shall walk through woodlands, swim in the oceans, fly through the sky, and travel where few people have ever gone before. And whilst you may be sitting on your rock thinking that I am speaking to somebody else, one of the other people who are hearing these words, you will come to realize that everything I show you is just for you, only you. How is that possible? Well, sit with me a while, and I will show you how the world you thought you knew is actually an illusion. The truth is far more spectacular and beautiful.